Witam, to Łukasz z Long Story Short. Dzisiaj kilka głosów w dyskusji na temat tego, czy Bitcoin w jakiś sposób torował drogę dla CBDC oraz czy może on być dziełem służb specjalnych, np. NSA. Posłuchamy wypowiedzi profesora Richarda Wernera dla Toma Schwitzera z kanału Blue Tiger Studio oraz Marka Mossa wraz z Robertem Bridlowem dla kanału Kitco News z prowadzącą Michelle Makori. Najpierw fragment z profesorem Richardem Wernerem. Odpowiada on na pytanie, kiedy pierwszy raz zaczęto wspominać o CBDC. Przypomina on, że Bitcoin zaczął być zmiankowany w mainstreamowych mediach o tematyce finansowej, a później bank JP Morgan zrobił przełomowy ruch w kierunku propagacji Bitcoina, zapowiadając współpracę z ludźmi, którzy obsługują kryptowaluty oparte o blockchain i rozproszony rejestr. Następny ruch należał do Christine Lagarde, szefowej Europejskiego Banku Centralnego, która powiedziała, że musi coś zaoferować w odpowiedzi na Bitcoina, ale według profesora Wernera nie ma takiej potrzeby, ponieważ w Europie przelewy bardzo szybko działają i jego zdaniem są najlepsze na świecie. Zdaniem Wernera potrzeba odpowiedzi przez ECB na Bitcoina to bardzo słaby argument. Redaktor wtrąca, że pochodzenie Bitcoina jest nadal nieznane, na co Werner odpowiada, że tak, ale są dane pewne podpowiedzi, gdyż twórca Bitcoina Satoshi Nakamoto to jest jednoznacznie brzmienie japońskie. Jeśli po japońsku to rozważać, to powinno się najpierw mówić o nazwisku, a później o imieniu, czyli Nakamoto Satoshi. To jest jako pierwsza rzecz. A druga rzecz jest taka, że jak to rozpracowywać, to on mówi, że Naka oznacza centrum z japońskiego, zaś moto oznacza pochodzenie. Zaś słowo Satoshi jest związane z mądrością lub inteligencją. Mówiąc skrótowo, oznacza inteligencję. Czyli Nakamoto Satoshi oznacza centralną inteligencję. I w ten sposób dochodzimy do wskazania na NSA, National Security Agency. Po takiej relacji i wstępie posłuchajmy oryginału.
Then Bitcoin was actually pushed by some mainstream organizations such as the Financial Times. Very early on, the Reuters and Bloomberg that put out financial quotes would already include Bitcoin prices. And there would be big articles about Bitcoin when it was totally fringe and tiny, nobody knew about it. But then there was more and more, and then some of the large banks, JP Morgan, started to say that, well, we're going to collaborate with people that work with Bitcoin or other similar electronic, distributed ledger, blockchain-related currencies similar to Bitcoin. And then also central banks said, oh, we have to get in on this. And so Bitcoin has served as a sort of excuse for central banks to be able to say, we also need, there's market demand for this now. In fact, this is what Lagarde said. That's why we need to consider now introducing CBDCs because, we have to offer something. When really, as I said, there's no need. We have digital currency. We've got bank digital currency. Yeah. That's worked well. There's and particularly in continental Europe, it's actually the best system in the world. It's very fast transactions. There's almost never an error. I've been in other countries where you have entire items and systems to handle reconciliation errors and settlement errors and so on. Yeah. It doesn't happen in Europe. So it's a very effective system. And so why do we need something? You see, that's where Bitcoin was useful. It's like, we do need something else now because central banks also need to offer something similar to Bitcoin, which is a very weak argument, really.
Okay. Is it somehow related that they might introduce Bitcoin themselves to in the end make the argument that they also needed a digital coin?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah. You see, so
because the origins of Bitcoin are still it's a black box. Nobody know.
They give you some hints.
Yeah.
For example, I've said this many years ago. Having lived in Japan for 12 years, I was interested in the fact that the alleged legendary or apocryphal founder of Bitcoin is called Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah.
Now I thought, okay, what does that mean, Satoshi Nakamoto? And then there was no such person. There were people saying, is it this person or that person? But nobody really seemed to be the actual Satoshi Nakamoto. But that's the sort of name they used. And it is a Japanese name. Yeah. Okay, if it's a Japanese name, well then let's treat it like a Japanese name, which means step one, put it in the order of Japanese names. Now, in all Asian languages, you put the family name first.
Yeah.
So it's Nakamoto Satoshi.
Yeah.
That's step one. Okay. Step two, write it in Japanese. And if we had a board, I'd write it down. So write it in, they actually use Chinese characters for this. Nakamoto is very, very simple. It's Naka, which is also part of the name for China, the center, the central kingdom, you know.
Oh, okay.
And Moto is the second character of Japan, the origin of the sun, the origin. So center, origin. And Satoshi is the Chinese character for wisdom or intelligence. Now, you often use two characters to emphasize one concept, which is how you could read this. So this could mean very central. So center and then moto together is really central, okay? And Satoshi, you can translate as intelligence. So we're really saying this name means central intelligence.
Well, yeah. Yeah, it's, yeah.
Anyway, so I mean, it's clear that
I never heard this. I never read this, so yeah.
Well, you've got to at least have some basic understanding of Japanese and writing these in Japanese, but...
Drugi fragment, którym się zajmiemy, to ten z Kitco News, gdzie Michelle McCory prosi o komentarz na temat zarzutów od E.B. Tucker, że Bitcoin jest koniem trojańskim dla CBDC, który przygotował grunt pod cyfrowe waluty banków centralnych i że jest dużo niejasności co do genezy powstania Bitcoina. Posłuchajmy oryginału.
Another issue that those on the gold equation like to bring up is the idea that the central bank digital currency is in fact the result of Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin was Robert's laughing at this, but it's a question that comes up often, that Bitcoin was the Trojan horse for a central bank digital currency, that Bitcoin lays the groundwork, the foundation, that people are open to the idea of a digital currency, accept it willingly, and it sets up the mindset, and then the CBDC enters. And the E.B. Tucker has a whole theory about this big gold bug as well, big macroeconomist, and saying we don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto really is, that sows a big seed of doubt, that it could be an NSA project, but ultimately the details lead to the same idea that Bitcoin is the Trojan horse facilitating the way for a central bank digital currency and stemming back to the lack of clarity on the origin with regards to Satoshi Nakamoto. What do you say to that, Mark?
Mark Moss, odpowiadając, powołuje się na defuzję innowacji, gdzie tłumaczy, że najpierw jest mała adopcja, później jest przełom, a następnie szersze zastosowanie u większych mas ludzi. Jego zdaniem CBDC jako wprowadzane odgórnie i z rządowym zaufaniem, to ono powinno przyzwyczajać ludzi do Bitcoina, a nie odwrotnie. Argumentuje dalej, że nie wiemy co prawda kim jest Satoshi Nakamoto, ale przecież używamy wielu rzeczy, których wynalazców nie znamy. Nie wiemy na przykład kto wymyślił koło, ale wszyscy je używamy. Dalej mówi, że są obawy, że jest backdoor od CIA, a przecież kod źródłowy jest otwarty dla wszystkich i nie ma tam backdoor. Nawet jeśli służby to wymyśliły, to jako, że to jest właśnie open source, to wiemy, że nie ma tam backdoor. Posłuchajmy oryginału.
There's so many ways that's wrong. Before we were recording, Robert said, well, they should have picked a worse worst asset than Bitcoin. Yeah. But there's so many ways that it's wrong. So let's break down a couple of those. So first of all, what happens with new technology? So I like E.B. Tucker. I've followed his information for a long time. Sorry, buddy, you're wrong. So if you understand how technology works, there's something called a diffusion of innovation. So it's like a bell curve. And you have the innovators, the people who create it. Then you have the early adopters, the true believers. Those are Robert and I. We didn't create it, but we're the true believers. But then there's something called a chasm before the early majority comes in. The chasm is where something has to change in someone's perspective to be able to bring the early majority in. And so I think it's actually the opposite way. And the reason why is so you have a brand new technology and people are like, what is this Bitcoin, some magic internet money? I can't trust it. I don't hold it in my hand. This is what the gold bugs say. Something digital could never work. I would never use that. So it's the CBDC that will actually normalize digital money, not the other way around. CBDCs will be like, well, no, this is from the government. This is safe. You can trust it. So then people will use it. So they should have started with the CBDC. People get used to this digital money. Then they go, okay, well, I'll give Bitcoin a try. So that's the first thing, the diffusion of innovations. You have to understand that. The second thing I would say is, sure, we've heard we don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is. We use all types of technologies. We don't know who invented them, like a wheel. We all drive on them every day. I don't know who invented the wheel, but yet I use it. But ultimately what I would say is about, was it created by the CIA? And people would ask that with fear, like there's some sort of a backdoor built in, they could rug pull it or whatever. And all the other cryptocurrencies out there, they're proprietary. There's proprietary code, so we don't know how they work. And they want to keep it that way because that's their secret, right? Bitcoin is open source. We say don't trust, verify. So it's open source. We can see all the code. There is no backdoors built into that. So maybe, hypothetically, potentially, the CIA did create it. Sure, maybe. But there's no backdoors. It's open source. And so we can see that. We know that.
Następnie Robert Bridlow wtrąca, że kontrola nad podażą waluty to jest bardzo istotna rzecz, gdzie wszystkie banki centralne chcą ją zwiększać według swojej woli, bo to uwalnia skryte opodatkowanie z użyciem inflacji. Bitcoin nie może mieć zmienianej podaży, ma swoją stałą ograniczoną ilość, więc historia z Trojanem nie ma dla niego sensu, bo dałeś najpierw ludziom pieniądz, którego nie kontrolujesz i nie możesz zmieniać, a potem dajesz ludziom gorszy pieniądz, który ty kontrolujesz i ty możesz zmieniać. To nie ma sensu, bo ludzie wybiorą lepszy pieniądz. Jego zdaniem CBDC są konkurencyjną odpowiedzią na Bitcoina od banków centralnych na zakłócenia w postępie technologicznym, który stworzył Bitcoin. Posłuchajmy oryginału.
That's a key point, is that it is control over the money supply that matters. Every monetary authority or central bank, what they exclusively want is the ability to expand that money supply at will, because that is a way to invoke this shadow taxation called inflation. Bitcoin is the only monetary technology in history that no one can change the supply of. So to assert that it is a Trojan horse for CBDCs makes no sense, because you're going to introduce a money that no one can change. You're going to give people the option to this ultimate form of money just so you can introduce an inferior form of money that you can manipulate the supply of. It makes no sense.
Well,
People would choose the money that's better for them, so you would introduce the thing that's inferior and people won't use it. What the CBDC is a competitive response by the central bank to a technological disruption that Bitcoin introduced.
Następnie Michel pyta, czy gdyby wyszło jednak, że Satoshi to NSA, to czy pogorszyłoby to sentyment u użytkowników? A Robert odpowiada, że ludzie nie kierują się sentymentem, lecz używają Bitcoina, bo dobrze działa, a nie dlatego, że się dobrze z nim czują. Posłuchajmy oryginału.
well, the argument would be that if it were to be revealed that Satoshi Nakamoto was in fact a CIA or NSA operative, that would change the underlying sentiment regarding Bitcoin. And
Then they don't understand Bitcoin. It's about the consensus protocol and the integrity of it. It's not about sentiment. People are using Bitcoin because it works, not because they feel good about it.
To tyle, jeśli chodzi o relacjonowanie wypowiedzi tych trzech osób. Od siebie dodam tylko takie coś, że kiedyś słyszałem i bodajże to było właśnie w Kitco News jakaś rozmowa o Bitcoinie. Być może właśnie też z tym Robertem Bridlowem, ale on już był wtedy pojedynczym gościem w tym programie i powiedział takie coś, że nie można w żaden sposób powstrzymać działania Bitcoina w sieci internetowej, ale można ludziom uniemożliwić, zabronić dostępu do niego, dostępu do korzystania z niego. Brzmi to dosyć dystopijnie, ale nie można tego wykluczyć na kanwie tego wszystkiego, co słyszymy, co nam globaliści szykują, prawda? To tyle. Dziękuję, pozdrawiam.